Are you? You want me to do it?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Friday night BBCAN edition for the fans. Here we are today. I'm Sheldon with our usuals, Kiley and Josh, and I am so excited. Today, we have BBCAN Season 1 OG house guest, alumni, diary room magical man, strategy genius, Peter Brown here to give us his thoughts on this season of BBCAN. Peter,
wow, what a very generous opening there for me. I sincerely appreciate all the kind words.
I don't think it's generous. I think it's you.
Hey, I'll take it. Any kind of kindness that I could find in this world, I'll take it. So thank you very much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So, Peter, since you left the house 10 years ago now, have you been keeping up with Big Brother Canada? Have you seen the game evolve and change over time? What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. Look, when we walked in day one, season one, we had no idea what to expect. This was a whole new Big Brother. Obviously, the only real point of reference we had was, for most people, the American version. So we had no idea what was in store for us, had no idea we would even get a season 2 and so on. And then here we are now, 10 seasons later, they have another one in the title again. So it has been quite something to see the evolution of Big Brother Canada as it's went on. And there are 155 of us now. We started with 15, and I like to consider them all at least friendly, if not friends. We're a very tight-knit community here in the BBCAN landscape.
Do y'all have like a Facebook page or an Instagram where you all talk to each other?
Yeah, actually, there is a big Facebook group for house guests for Canada and the United States that we kind of use for like events and cool. Stuff like that. But I don't know, I was such a huge fan of the American version, and I would always read about these big trips that they would go on and the postseason activity. So as soon as I got the privilege to play here in Canada, I wanted to initiate that kind of community as quickly as possible. So, I would organize trips down to the States for their finales. I would organize finale events up here just to keep the group as connected as possible because, for a long time, we never thought that Canada would get its own Big Brother. And I would think like, oh man, am I going to have to go marry an American girl just so I can get citizenship so I can apply? These are the things that would go through my head because I just love the game so much. Thankfully, we got our own. And so, I don't know. I know a lot of people from Big Brother USA, obviously, and UK and Australia, and there's no community. There's no sense of togetherness and pride. I think Big Brother Canada has got to be number one in the whole world for just community inclusiveness for the entirety of our cast. And I think it's just because we're all such huge fans of the game. We're all such oddball people, and now we kind of get to coexist in this giant, big, special group.
Well, I think you may have touched upon something I would love to talk about. I think the people who are cast on Big Brother Canada, as opposed to BBUS, I personally don't watch any of the other seasons, but they seem to be fantastic people, good people, hard players, and also mostly fans. I'm wondering, Peter and everybody else, what do y'all think? How is BBCAN and BBUSA different? Are they different?
So, we were kind of talking about this before the show, and I just, I have been binging BBCAN, and so it has renewed my love for Big Brother because you go back to those early seasons when you had Janelle, give me that key, bitch. That's the kind of energy that I loved, and that's what made me fall in love with Big Brother. And as Big Brother US has gone on, we've gotten so many recruits, people that are there to build up their Instagram followings and, their businesses, which that's, part of life, I guess. But seeing people in BBCAN that I feel like everybody is cast because they want to be there. And it is very, very refreshing. So I'm super happy with it.
Yeah, and then Big Brother Canada is like, I would say, like kind of like revived the love for Big Brother for me. Like as for me, like growing up, I started watching Big Brother 12 in the US version, which I felt was a mediocre season, but like it kind of made me want, and not to me, but like I look back at all the past seasons and I was just like, you know what, I kind of see why the OG seasons were actually very iconic. The newer seasons kind of like lost its flavor, but then Big Brother Canada did something that's a little bit that kind of feels different to me, which is kind of like more dynamic characters, more engagements, twists, a twist that's being tossed at the wall, but most of the time it's actually really well utilized. And let's not forget that the past couple of seasons, when Arissa started to become executive producer, she then changed by throwing in more diversity for Big Brother Canada. So now it is 50-50. And not only that, it revolutionized Survivor, Big Brother US, The Amazing Race. All of those shows are now following the same format. So you could say that Big Brother Canada basically reunited the love for me for Big Brother like it did in the past seasons. But that's how I see it.
A lot of people echo similar sentiments as well. You know, that Big Brother Canada has really reinvigorated love. For me, I started Big Brother USA season 1, year 1. And I watched several UK and Australia seasons too. So when I went into the house, I really felt like Big Brother Canada's production was the UK vibe with the American rule and episode structure. Because in the UK, they would do daily episodes, but so we still get the 3 a week. But like you said, it's much more character focused. There's much more tasks, levity. The States has, to me, kind of become a parody of itself a little bit. Like it sort of has become a cartoon. There's too many carnival noises, and it's a little too silly. They've forgotten the seriousness of it. The original point of Big Brother is taking a bunch of people from all different walks of life and put them in this magic box for a social experiment to see how they'll interact with one another. And so I feel like the United States version has lost sight of that sort of central focus. And Big Brother Canada has always had it at its core. It's a people first show. If it gets too bogged down in the comps and the challenges and, all the kind of buffoonery, you lose sight of the real appeal, which is just ordinary people in an extraordinary environment.
Yeah, and I think some of it too is like the authenticity. In the diary rooms in BBUS, it's all gotten so scripted, and people that just aren't themselves. Like we saw it in All Stars too, when like they're trying to get Kaser to say things that are just completely out of his personality, and I feel like it's just much more authentic in the Canada version. So
yeah,
I agree.
So different shows.
I'm moving to Canada, y'all. No.
Well, I think you have to be Canadian. Well, except for the 2 that were not from Canada. But I wonder what they would do. I don't think they bring people.
There's a lot of people. So Alec, so my best friend from season 1, the other member of the Shield, he was born in the United States, but is Canadian. So I mean, Tala was not born in Canada in our season. I think Liza's half American. Like, there's a lot of people who are not born in Canada who played on Big Brother. They're Canadian, but they were not born in Canada. So yeah, so long as you're Canadian by
there you go,
like a Canadian immigrant, I guess, then I think you're eligible for the show.
Kiley, if you want a passport, I'm available. Oh my gosh, she's married. Let's get to our shows this week. And it's been a little bit of a crazy week for Kyle Moore. Holy crap. We start off our Veto episode this week. Kyle puts 2, not 1, 2 of his own alliance members from 2 separate alliances on the block. Let's just start there. What the heck was that? Why?
Okay.
Why?
2 things. 1, I think Kyle completely forgot the purpose of the back door. Because 1, you could easily put up 2 easy targets with Betty and Jess or Betty and Kevin. And then if you wanted a backdoor Moose, do it that way. But to outright put up Stephanie and Moose, 2 members that are in your alliance of 7, and you're putting them on the block because 1, the outsiders think Steph is like a little bit shady, and then you're doing this, and then you're like throwing in Moose in there who is a little bit messy. It's like, okay, we see the logical reasons for both of them to go on the block, but the execution was horrible. And you could see later on in the episode on why that is, but it's just like, it baffles me that he actually followed through with that. Like, and Kyle was my winner pick. Like I feel like ashamed of myself that I picked him now. Like, why?
Just saying.
Yeah, Kyle is certainly a victim of his own hubris, I think, and perhaps an unfamiliarity with the show. Obviously, everybody knows Kyle's story, the reason why he's in there, and I guess that just goes to show that Twitter are not the casting geniuses that they perhaps think they are. Although it has given us this great week, so maybe they are geniuses after all. I don't know. But Kyle's instinct is actually correct. Like, I know there's, justifiably so, a ton of negativity going Kyle's way. So I'll try to balance it a little bit by saying that his instinct to turn on his allies before his allies have the opportunity to turn on him is absolutely correct. His instinct to go after Moose, who I think is a tremendous Big Brother player, is absolutely correct. But his, like you said, his timing and the way that he went about it, absolutely like just bafflingly wrong. But he's got the right instincts. He's just way too early. The disconnect for people that often get into the house is if they're only familiar with the TV show, in their head, everything happens really, really quickly. But inside the house, things happen slow. Like those like a day feels like a week feels like a month, and a month feels like forever in there. So you really have to be patient. And production wants to keep things moving and accelerated as well. So they love the big moves, the chaos, the catastrophe. And they're going to encourage someone who's going to be a bumbling fool because it provides good entertainment and it makes an uneven house dynamic, which is good for the viewers. So of course there would be pressure on Kyle to do something that makes good television, even if it's against his own game, because in his mind, he's thinking, okay, this is the thing that's going to catapult me into superstar status. It's in week 3. What happened in week 3, season 4? You're probably not going to be able to tell me. No. It's going to be forgotten about really quickly. Big Brother players and fans have a very short memory for, things like that. And so I think Kyle just got a little too big for his britches and wanted to do something that would be a great resume thing, and just shot himself in the foot repeatedly several times in what is almost inarguably the worst HOH in Big Brother Canada history.
Peter, how does that work? How does production how does that manifest that production pressures? Are they asking questions in the diary room? Like what happens?
So the best way to understand how the diary room process works is to watch Big Brother UK, because in Big Brother UK, you actually hear how Big Brother interacts with the house guests. It's exactly the same in the United States, and it's exactly the same in Canada, except for in our versions of the show, you don't hear that interaction. You only get kind of the sound bite of, the player responding to what Big Brother is asking you. But there's a very specific tone and tenor, and it's basically like, you get asked a very open-ended question and you ramble on for 2 or 3 minutes, and then they're like, okay, well, let's find the succinct version of that thought. And that's what you end up seeing on television. But Big Brother is kind of the silent player in the game, and a a player who's really playing at a high level will become aware of that. And you can start to use Big Brother to your advantage, because you can find out information from Big Brother if you're careful about how you listen to what kind of questions they're answering. You can start to figure out what kind of character you're being presented as in the game, what position you might have in the house, and how you're connected to other players. So a player like Kyle, if Big Brother's always asking him things like, Kyle, what move do you think would reflect strongest on you this week? How do you plan on making the biggest impact in the game? Do you think your alliance members might be coming for you? Is there value in getting rid of a close ally like Moose? Like, you can ask kind of leading questions like that. And then Kyle, in his own mind, will probably go, yeah, you know what? Like, as a confident person, he'll be like, all right, yeah, I can pull this off. I can do this. I believe in me. You're right, Big Brother. I am going to go for this person. I am going to go for that person. I am going to make the big move. I'm not just going to be a bystander here. I'm going to make, great TV, as Sabrina Abate said so many years ago. So you have to play against Big Brother as much as you're playing against all the other participants in the game. And in Canada, similar to the UK, you have to be playing for the viewership as well, because we saw Marty got safety this week. The fans constantly interact with the game in the house. So not only do you have to be a good player to the other house guests, you have to interact with Big Brother, and you have to remember that Canada is always watching.
I love everything that you just said. And even though it's skipping way, way ahead in what we're going to talk about tonight, but talking about like reading into things, I think Kevin had one of the best moves of the week where he sits Marty down and he's like, Marty, I know that you think you're super close with Gino and Kyle, but why do you think Canada gave you safety? And I was just like, yes, thank you. This was amazing. And so, he took that moment of, oh, hey, like he created this doubt in Marty's mind of maybe I'm not completely with these guys. And there's a reason why Canada wanted to keep me safe over everybody else.
Yep, that's a perfect point. He leveraged the information based on the trope of the show of audience participation and used it to manipulate someone to his advantage. That's a top level Big Brother move.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to get to that in just a bit.
It's way to the end. But
Peter said something that was so interesting. You mentioned that, you think that Moose is a top tier Big Brother player. And I honestly think that after the repercussion, after these two people were nominated, we started to see those repercussions. And one of the conversations we had was between Herman and Moose. And Herman goes to Moose and he says, I heard a rumor from Kyle that you were going to put me and Tanisha up. And Moose's retort right there in the moment was, that was sarcasm. And he acted it out. He showed what it would have sounded like. He repeated it later on in another conversation with other people. That was another one of these top tier moves where Moose again comes out on top. What do y'all think?
Mm-hmm.
I think Moose is really good at doing damage control. Like probably one of the best players that utilizes damage control to a phenomenal level. Like we've seen in the past episode with Steph, he got into a heated argument with Steph and still was able to keep Steph in good graces with Moose. And I'm like, how? That's insane. And the fact that he was able to get rid of the target off his back with Herman and try to utilize the information to the best of his benefit. Yes, Herman was a little bit sus with Moose by the end of it, but at least it was better than what it was before because his paranoia got the better of him, but he calmed him down. So yeah, even though Moose says a little too much when it comes down to information towards within his alliance and outside his alliance, but at least he utilizes damage control effectively when information gets loose. So phenomenal damage control on my end, but if he would have kept his mouth shut a little bit more on the info, I think Moose would have lasted a long time without touching the block. Personally, in my opinion. But yeah, I fully agree with Sheldon on that one. Phenomenal damage control. Both him and Kevin utilized them very well. I think if Moose continues to stay, no matter how many arguments Moose gets in, he's going to get out of zero heat.
Right. If you're a likable person who other people want to just exist around, you're probably going to do pretty good in Big Brother. 100%. And I think a lot of times what happens is people overly fixate on what they see on the TV show, which is less than 3 hours a week of a game that's being played 24/7. Big Brother is a really, really hard game, and it is impossible to be perfect at all times. So yeah, maybe you get bored and you run your mouth a little too much. Maybe you talk to the wrong person at the wrong time. It is so hard to keep tabs on everything at all times in there. Some players are able to do it more effectively than others. Every year, that's just the nature of the beast. But for those players who, like you said, can damage control really well, lie straight to your face, or at least manipulate the truth in an effective way that seems believable, and you have a good impression of that person after the fact, that's a skill, and that is a Big Brother specific skill. I like Moose as a player. I like him as a personality. I hope that he's lasts a long time in this season. But you have to remember, I think people are overly hard sometimes on what they see just on the show, realizing that it is just a small part of a game that is played every second of every day.
Yeah. And I also want to interject that the live things are also playing another key portion of the game, because so much happened within the past couple of weeks that was trying to be crammed within 45 minutes per episode. So it's just like you don't know exactly where the full dynamics happen. So like, so like they only highlight like up here, you may know this more than I do, but like they like highlight, I think, the top 4 or 5 key points within the week, and then they try to utilize it effectively within the first few weeks. Like, is that like ideal, or do you think there's more than that?
I mean, basically, you know, you're trying to tell a cohesive story for the broad audience as best as possible in a game that literally changes 1 minute to the next. So that's a really hard thing to do from a production standpoint in real time. It's a lot easier on a show like Survivor, which is complete, and then they can craft the story from beginning to end. Big Brother happens in real time, so they're kind of always, you know, having to go with the flow, but to try to make sure the show makes sense to the 95% of the audience who aren't live feeders and aren't internet fans and things like that. So yeah, they try to find the things that are going to create the most coherent story through the week. But even the live feeds, you know, they're down like 50% of the time. So, you know, and another kind of thing that happens too is like, if I'm having a conversation with somebody, you know, if I'm having a conversation with Alec and I know that Alec doesn't like Andrew, but I like Andrew, I'm going to probably talk smack about Andrew to Alec because I know that he doesn't like Andrew. And then I'll go to Andrew and have a good friendly conversation. And someone on the live feeds might see that and be like, oh, he's being two-faced and yada, yada, yada. But really, it's like, you know, you can be trying to establish more trust with somebody by telling them what they want to hear, essentially, or getting in their good graces, and then being truthful to another person later because you genuinely have a connection with them. So a lot of the times, you know, fans will be hard on someone for, you know, playing both sides, so to speak. And you really, you know, unless you're in their head, you really don't understand what their specific motivations are in that moment of maybe they're trying to get information. Maybe they're having a real conversation. Maybe they're trying to fool someone. Like, you never really know. So like, I don't know. Like, I know the reason why I kind of keep going back to that is because I've talked to so many house guests that have gotten off the show now for 10 years, and they have a really hard time getting off because the internet is so hard on them. And then oftentimes they'd be like, oh, well, you know, you shouldn't have went on if you didn't want the blowback. And I think that's a really weak argument because unless you're in there, you really don't understand what it's like to live through that experience. Like, for example, Stephanie, who eventually, you know, was evicted this week, I've known her for several years, and I know how huge of a fan she was of the show going in. And since talking to her of coming out, the whole thing shifts. You know, you have one perspective before you play, you have a brand new perspective when you play, and then after you play, you sort of really realize what has actually happened. And so you can see kind of the dark underbelly of the interweb
pulling back
through that experience. Yeah.
But one thing with Moose that I think was so effective in his conversation with Herman is, yes, he, you know, kind of lied to Herman, like, no, you know, like there was a thing, but he stuck somewhat to the truth of like, yes, I said this, but it was in this context. And so it's more believable when it's based in the truth. So I think that's where Moose is very, very good.
Especially after the crazy week Kyle was having, where, you know, anything Moose could say now is, believable. Well, Kyle didn't take it the right way.
Yeah.
We then move on and we see it's time to spin the Veto player Wheel of Fortune. But before that, just in case we have to get a house guest pick, you see Moose going to Josh. Moose going to Josh and asking him to be his house guest pick. I didn't get it. Could somebody explain it?
That one, yeah, like that was a random one because it's just like, that's not entirely what happened because like, I think the reason why they showed that is because, spoiler alert, like Moose won Veto that round. I bet because on the live feeds, what happened is that everyone got annoyed with Stephanie asking everybody to use the veto on her. That was the main thing of what happened. I'm surprised they didn't show that part, but they only showed Moose asking Josh. Why? I'm not entirely sure because for some reason, Josh has a connection with Moose. Like, I don't know. It wasn't fully established. Like, I even tried to analyze that myself, but it didn't quite make sense from a story perspective. I think because Moose won Veto, that's why they showed something like that. And then Josh was also playing in Veto. That's also why they showed it. But I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine, but that's the only thing I can really think of because of that.
Yeah, well, I assume it aligns with what happened later with Josh going up on the block. So it's sort of a connector between the two situations.
Oh, that's true.
From a story perspective, I think that's probably what happened. But, we continue and we see this interesting conversation between Summer and Herman, shit-talking Kyle, and then we get to my favorite quote of the entire season. This comes from Kyle. From Summer, my favorite player so far in this game. You got Summer. She says, Kyle Moore is a joke. I would rather align myself with a damn tree, and it won't be peaches and mangoes for him after this veto comp. Summer, with her sass, with her personality, basically saying this guy is a fool.
Oh,
I love Summer as well. She's probably emerged as my favorite character this season, if not only because of the fact that she pretty much above everybody else seems to fundamentally understand how to be a Big Brother character, just being the most entertaining version of herself at all times, whether it's in the diary room, in the house. She makes the most of her opportunities, which I think is an indicator. And she seems pretty switched on in terms of the game, I would say. So, definitely someone to watch. But I really like her too. And I didn't know if that was actually a reference to Big Brother UK, because in Big Brother UK, they had a talking tree one year in the backyard that gave them tasks and stuff. I don't know if she's that big of a fan, but that's where my mind went, and I created that correlation. But anyway, I thought that quote was good too, and I also am a huge fan of Summer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also, she just drug him all week in her DRs, and she even made that one where she's like, you are a 23-year-old boy. You do not have the grasp on this house that you think you do. And so, not only does he tank his game with the people that he put on the block, he tanked it with every single person in the house, pretty much, except for Gino and JC Lynn.
Oh,
completely tanked his game.
Oh my gosh, Summer is one of my only draft picks that's actually doing somewhat decent, which I'll highlight on my picks in just a second, because I had Jay's out, I had Stephanie, we'll get to her in a second, and then I had Summer, and then Kyle left, but Kyle has no life left. So I'm happy to hear that Summer is actually doing decent than what my past pool picks have. So I'm hoping Summer actually does really well. I love her quotes with Kyle dragging down all all week long. She was like, Kyle, you're a 23-year-old man child. You can't make decisions for yourself. I'm like, Summer just made me laugh all week. I just love her.
So we get to picking our veto players. Steph spins. House gets choice. Shocker, shocker. She takes the big, strong man, Gino, who she thinks is going to play that veto on her. We got Moose. Moose spins. And who does Moose get? The exact same person that he asked to play for him, Josh. And Kyle gets his frenemy, I guess, Betty. And Betty's super excited to play. We get to the competition. Helena is hosting Bee's Knees competition. They got to build some honeycomb, sift through the beehives, use their stingers with their rear ends to find these pieces of honeycomb, and finally maneuver this honeycomb across this puzzle they built to get into these little holes. And shocker, shocker, guess who wins? It is third time in a row that one of the people on the block, Moose.
I loved it. I really just didn't expect Moose to perform that well, but he knew that his ass was on the line. And watching him do it, he was in a hurry. He was getting his balls down the slope. We're getting kind of graphic here. But he played like he needed to win it. And so I love to see that level of competitiveness.
The competitions are always intense. Comp day there's a lot of nervous energy in the house. You don't know what it's going to be. I played in the original Bee's Knees, which is a very different competition, and ours was rife with controversy. This one certainly less so. But it was nice to see people back in those bee costumes. And yeah, it is tough to perform in a manner in which you're not accustomed to, in a rushed manner rather. And then, you've got everybody watching you, there's cameras around, it's much harder to like perform. Like a lot of people think that, oh, I can just walk in and it'll be easy, but you're in a ridiculous costume. You're doing something that's really unconventional to try to put that all together. Compete everyone else because everyone wants to at least appear to be so competitive. It's really hard to do. So I was definitely impressed with Moose's performance getting it out. And yeah, the more Veto is used, I think the more chaotic the season is, which makes it more entertaining.
Yeah, and with Moose winning Veto, I have 2 L's to give to Kyle. 1 L to give to him for now when Moose winning Veto, when he should have backdoored Moose at the beginning of the Veto ceremony before like nominations. But that was completely like stupid because now Moose is going to be gunning for Kyle full stop. He's going to reconnect with people like Summer, T, try to maybe flip her on, try to get in close quarters with like Helena. Like it's not going to look good for Kyle because now Kyle is set up to, like, if he doesn't get his allies to win HOH, he's done next week. So Moose winning Veto was worst case scenario in my eyes for him because, like, yeah, like Stephanie winning Veto, sure, put Betty up and then Moose goes. But then now for him, I'm sorry, but that's just like playing with fire for that week. But things get better for Kyle, right, Sheldon?
I don't know, but I have to say my favorite part of that veto competition was the end because you saw Moose win. There you go. Camera 2, right on Kyle. Looks like he shot himself. It was no way. He does not control his emotions. You see it all in his face, and he knows, I took somebody that I knew from home. I decided to break that tight relationship or some level of a relationship that we had. I put him on. I now forgot the fact that we were both in sports management programs. We were both athletes. We both had the ability to maybe compete and win. He won, is going to take himself off the block, and I have to put somebody else on. What the heck,
He's
Kyle?
literally the Canadian Frenchie. I mean,
what? Yes.
Pretty much.
Yes. So one of the interesting things we see next is we see Helena, Steph, and JC Lynn having a quick conversation together. And for the first time, at least acknowledged on the TV show, somebody says, oh, shit, it seems like the people who are nominated and are going to be going home, they always seem to win this POV. Maybe the only way we could do something about this is to backdoor them. What? Good morning.
Wow.
Have you just started playing the game?
Wow. After 3 veto wins from the nominees, now you all realize that? Oh my gosh. Okay, listen. I get why like they finally realized like after the 3rd week in a row that being like, yeah, maybe we should have like backdoored somebody. Maybe we should have utilized that more effectively. I think, okay, 1st week with Jess, okay, lesson learned, fine. 2 with I forget who won a veto in the 2nd week, but I believe
JC Lynn.
JC Lynn won veto for the 2nd week. And now you have Moose winning the 3rd week. So the 2nd time I would have been like, okay, maybe we should have done a backdoor the 3rd time. But now the 3rd time everybody realizes that. Hey, well, 3rd time's a charm. Now they all realize and know that like, hey, let's just put up 2 pawns and then one of them wins veto, takes himself off, and then put up the real target. But hey, kudos to them for finally figuring that out.
Although, contrary to that, I mean, yes, it's true this year that it's been used often, and each week the nominee has taken themselves off. You could get yourself in trouble by nominating 2 pawns, then having a random person win veto, not using it, and then your pawn goes, and then you don't have the backdoor option at all. So you can kind of always get yourself into trouble regardless. I mean, the evil dick strategy is if you have targets, put them up. Because at least it forces them. There are some people who perform well under pressure in these competitions, and there are some people that do not perform well under pressure in these competitions. The difference in Big Brother Canada now, since season 7, is the HOH does not play in veto, so it increases the likelihood that a veto will be used. But I think there's certainly value in, I think you can outsmart yourself and try to be too clever if you're banking on a backdoor move. Because if your backdoor target winds up being drawn for a veto, then they're playing in veto, and then they're not really a backdoor target. Because a true backdoor is someone who does not play in veto. They do not have the opportunity to prevent themselves from going on the block. So, I mean, you know, I think there are pros and cons to both approach. I think it's just unique for this season specifically that the nominee happens to be winning all the time. It'll be curious to see if that pattern continues or if they maybe change up their plans for, as the weeks go on.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk conversations that Marty started to have, because Marty really had a really interesting week here. Kyle, Herman having a conversation with Gino and Marty, and Kyle pitches putting Marty up to beside Steph so that Steph goes home. And then Marty says, whoa, I don't feel like I'm part of this group. I don't feel like I'm anywhere close to this. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be part of this. Maybe I need to rethink myself. So he basically says, maybe I'm actually not part of this group here, and I'm not as close with all of you as I thought I was. And then Marty has another conversation with Kyle later on that basically says, look, Josh is a friggin' threat. He maybe doesn't always win, but he's so close to being the winner. And what do you think of the strategy? What do you think of what's Marty doing? He's basically telling them, I'm not sure how close I really am to you. He's saying all the words out loud, exactly what's on his mind, and then somehow goes in and says, Josh is a threat.
The way that I see with Marty is that he is the kind of person that just wants to make big moves. I don't think he realizes that taking a shot at Josh when here's the thing. If you want to take a big target out, you need to have the votes to get that person out of here. Putting someone like Josh is incredibly risky because basically you're dividing the house. So
I like what happened with this because Marty says, let's get out Josh on Kyle's HOH. Nobody's pissed at Marty this week. Everybody hates Kyle. And so if Marty would have, gotten it his way, Josh could have left on Kyle's HOH. People are pissed at Kyle and Marty's hands are clean. So I love using somebody else's HOH to do what you want to do.
Oh no, you have a valid point with that. I'm just saying that from a logical perspective on putting someone like Josh is that what if it backfires? And then it will blow back on the people that try to push for Josh to go up.
But it's not blowing back on Marty. I mean, he's managed to create more relationships outside of who he thought going into the week he was with to say oh gosh, I'm definitely not with him. And so even though he was the one that suggested putting Josh up there, he doesn't even execute and vote him out himself. You know what I mean? He gets on the right side of it and, has made him, maneuvered in a completely different direction than he started this week.
The instinct to get rid of somebody who you think can beat, I think I might even been Johnny Fairplay that said this, but some reality person from Big Brother Survivor said, if you look around and you don't think you can beat someone in a foot race for $1 million or $500,000 or $100,000 or whatever it is, the grand prize. But if you look and you don't think you can beat them in a foot race at the end, get rid of them. And so Marty, if he looks at, I don't think that I could beat Josh in a foot race. I probably couldn't beat Josh in most things. So I think the instinct to get rid of Josh, who is physical, intelligent, social, easy to like, smart guy, he clicks all the boxes for a legitimate threat to go far in the game. And so the instinct to want to get rid of a player like that in the early portion of the game when there's a lot of players and it's easy to kind of hide yourself in the vote is right. But like you said, you have to make sure that you have those numbers before you're going into that. And it was just another misstep by Kyle, really, because Kyle, I think, probably could have got it out a little easier by going the Betty route. It might have increased the chances of Betty going home. But again, he got it in his head that, that's a waste. I can't do a waste. But the unfortunate thing for Kyle is you can't win the game in week 3, but you can lose it.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's true.
So we get to our veto ceremony. The veto is used, obviously. Veto is used on Moose, and Kyle has to put someone up. And who does he put up? Well, just as Marty suggested, here comes Josh.
And this is my winner pick, y'all. And so I am worried for Josh. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my winner pick in week 3. This is terrible.
So Josh and Steph on the block, and right away, pan to Steph saying, I got this. I got nothing to worry about. Look at me. I'm going to put on my peach dress. That's what she says at some point during this episode. Why was she so cocky? Why was she so sure? Did she just not do the work? Like what happened?
I don't know. I think Steph probably had like too much faith in Kyle, which is coming from the same person who basically told you you're going up on the block. Mush was saying all this stuff about you. I'm going to use the veto on you to make sure you're good. It's like, it's not adding up at all. So like if I were Steph, I'd be low key worried because it's just like, Josh is a well-liked person in the house. Like I could potentially be going because nobody would want him out. So Steph wasn't really campaigning the right way. He was just like going out to people, being rude to Jess, saying to people, be like, hey, you know what? I got this in the bag. Josh is going to go home. No. Yeah. People like Summer, T, and potentially Jess, they're all going to find a way to campaign for Josh to stay. So it's just like, if Steph would have just came by with a little bit more of a pleading approach, that might have made her one or a couple of more votes. But yeah, her campaigning is a little bit. Yeah, she definitely got cocky on that. I fully agree with Sheldon on that.
Yeah, I think she probably put too much faith in her presumed allies to save her numerically. And normally what happens if a quote big player, or at least someone that the House recognizes as a big player is put up as the replacement nominee, chances are they're probably going to be in danger. So from Steph's perspective, if she thinks that she has a group of people who are definitely going to be voting for her, and the perception that a big player is now vulnerable and is likely to go out, that should be a pretty easy case to make to everybody. Like, okay, here you have this opportunity of somebody that will be really hard to get out later if you let them stay around. Why get rid of me, who's largely kind of been in the background as the kind of default showman's bait character? Like, conventional wisdom would suggest that Josh should go in just about every scenario. Problem is that because Kyle is such a bubbling doofus, everyone kind of gathered around their glee and making him look like a fool. And then Steph was kind of the victim of her own inactivity. So it's a weird circumstance where kind of the target was the HOH, and then the one of the nominees became the proxy for that, which very rarely happens.
Yeah, and a lot of it too, I think, comes back completely on Kyle, like you're saying. He has that conversation with Summer where he's like, well, we're going to do this, and no, who is it? It's with Helena. Who's it with?
Yeah,
with Helena, where he's like, we're going to vote him out, and da 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 da. And she's like, you don't get to decide for me. I get to make my own decisions. And
right.
So that he just completely tanks himself.
So like, I got a quick question then for Peter. So you had the experience in the House. Like, how can you effectively convince others in the House to like make a move that's more beneficial to you, but not make it seem like you're controlling them? Because the way that Kyle was doing it was the wrong approach, in my opinion. You
have to make it valuable, at least for both of you, I think is the simple answer. Like if I have an objective that I want to get somebody out, or I want to put a target on somebody, I have to frame almost like ask the right series of questions to plant the idea in the other person's head so that they come to the same conclusion and then are essentially pitching it back to you. Like that's the most like creative way to do it, I suppose. The way that Kyle did it, which I think was very poor, in that he wouldn't even give her any information. She was like, well, who's going up? He's like, well, it could be this person or this person or this person. I don't know. Like, you're not building trust at all. You're just creating way more questions. If you really wanted to build trust in that moment, he lays out, look, I'm thinking about putting this person up. I'm only telling you this just because I really need the direct feedback. Like, if I put this person up, do you think that's a good move? And would you have my support in that? And then in the discussion of just this one particular person, maybe the other person starts to convince themselves that, yeah, you know what, that is the right move. Because A, it's not me. B, if I'm not aligned with that person, I don't care. And then C, now I've at least made a connection with the HOH, because who knows, there could be a twist, and then maybe next week, if I'm in power, they can do me the favor. Like, you always have to be kind of thinking 365 with every conversation that you're having, which is exhausting. But yeah, it's really hard to do, to manipulate somebody into doing something that solely benefits you, but you can do it. by you have to have like, so many people use the phrase social game, and a lot of times what social game can just come down to is, do I like spending time with you, and do I value the information that is coming out of your mouth? So if you randomly come to somebody that you haven't talked game with in 2-3 weeks into the game, and you're suddenly pitching them this miraculous thing, chances are they're going to, tell you to hit the bricks. But if you've always been kind of just like nice to them throughout the day, and like maybe have a little strategic talk here and there, but you're always checking in and you're developing a friendship, and then you come to them with something strategic and big, and it's like, okay, now's the time, like we have to do this, they're much more likely to play ball with you than you. Otherwise, you get the reaction that Helena did, which is to make funny faces to the camera and completely clown you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So now we come to our obligatory every single episode of BBCAN 10 this season, Kevin scenes. Because we need to get Kevin in there. And Kevin has a really strange conversation with Betty, where Kevin comes in ablazing and basically says, you go out there and pretend that you hate me and do this and you hate me. And she says, yeah, I do hate you. You're right.
I literally hate you.
Like I hate you. What do you think? You're gonna tell me what to do? Who the hell do you think you are? So we see Kevin, that shy, closed off, silly little Kevin, starting to come out, but maybe he's not coming out as strong as he thought he would. What's going on?
Oh my gosh! Like,
Yeah, I think the Betty ship has sailed. I think he should, just let that be what it is at this moment in time, and just maybe not try to.
yeah, like I think here's the thing. I think like it's clear that Betty doesn't like Kevin. Like, and I think Kevin like realizes that that's what Betty is doing, but he wants to use that for game just to make sure that he has everybody all protecting him. Dude, here's the thing. In Big Brother, not everybody's gonna like you. Not everybody's gonna want to like work with you or align with you. Sometimes they might be talking shit behind your back. Like, ooh, you just have to accept the fact that you might not get everybody in your corners. And guess what? If you win HOH, there's your number one target. Like, just leave it as it is. Like, I could kind of see why Kevin tried to do that, but the conversation was incredibly off. Like, even my mom, when my mom and I were watching the episode, earlier today, she was just saying to herself, like, what was the point of that? I'm like, I know. It makes no sense at all. I was sitting back here like, why Kevin? Like, Kevin, you have improved a little bit, but I don't know. He makes me question his game sometimes.
I thought the hypocritical moment in that conversation was when Betty illustrated that she does not like Kevin, and then he was like, all right, well, I'm coming for you. And then she was aghast, like, oh, you're coming for, I just told you that I hated you and I'm coming for you, but you're coming for me? Like, just that she was shocked. I actually think it's really smart for Kevin to continue to pester Betty as much as possible, for the sole reason that if I'm any other player in the game, and I am maybe skeptical about where I lie with Kevin, I know definitively that he's going for Betty before he's coming for me. And that's very important. Similar for Betty. If I'm an ally of Betty's, or if I'm a potential enemy of Betty's, I know that if she gets in power, she's going to go after Kevin before she's going after me. And from Kevin's perspective, the likelihood of Betty winning in competition is relatively low. So his anybody can win an AB, anybody can win a roll the ball down the hole at the right time, whatever. But even in a step up, step down, which Betty came really close, she still didn't get it. So if Kevin's arch nemesis in the game is someone who's unlikely to win competitions and has demonstrated not to have a lot of clout in the house, even though she's part of the Mandems 4 alliance, which I don't think Kevin is aware of, which is bad news for him. If Betty can influence one of those other girls to put him up. But at least from most people's perspective in the house, if there's, 2 people constantly going at one another, there's a ton of value to keep both of them around, because if either of them gets power, you know exactly where the punishment's going. So, I think it's sometimes it can be risky to be declarative and let everybody know who your target is, or who your enemy is. Oftentimes that can bite people in the butt. But in this particular case, since they have such a weird, antagonistic, open relationship, I think oddly it pushes both of their games forward, because why would I put up Kevin when I know he's going to, probably get rid of Betty? Why would I put up Betty if I know she's going to get rid of Kevin? It's like they kind of cancel each other out in a weird way, which I think will probably artificially extend their life in the game more than you would expect for people who have animus with one another.
And it certainly also helps that it doesn't seem like either of them have any strong group of 2, 3, 4 people around them that if the other one would go for them, they have people fighting. So it almost seems like they're both kind of islands by themselves. So let them fight.
Yeah, and also I also want to touch on what Peter just said with saying the hypocritical moment with Betty saying when Kevin saying to Betty being just pretending you hate me, and then Betty was like, I do hate you, and then Kevin then says, well then I'm gunning for you, and then Petty was just being all defensive. That reminds me of the Maddie scene in the hot tub in Euphoria when she was like, oh no, she was like, I know why I'm saying no, but why are you saying no? That literally reminds me of that. I'm it's it's just so mind baffling that it's just so many I had so many questions with that conversation, so many conversations that just makes me want to go why. But yeah,
I loved it, and I mean I love Betty just being like, I do hate you.
She just went blunt forward. I love
it. This is why I would not be successful in Big Brother. I have a very, very hard time faking people that I like. And so, if somebody was like, hey, let's pretend that we're working together, and let's keep up this facade. It's not a facade. I really enjoy
I really hate you.
So going from Kevin and Betty's hate mance to the moment we've all been waiting for. It's time for a first kiss between JC Lynn and Gino. It's happened, and it was so awkward. What do y'all think?
No, I didn't think it was awkward. I mean, it was awkward with everybody in the room, but it's been developing, and we all called it before the season that those were the two that were, going to have a showmance together. And so I'm happy for them. I like Gino. I like to look at him.
Gino and JC Lynn, it was kind of obvious. The second they got into the house, I think we all kind of had the idea that they were going to be the showmance of the season. But I think them kissing in front of people, yes, it's awkward, but it's also not good for them, because then it paints a target on both their backs as a showmance. Because publicly known showmances are going to get targeted very early on. So I wish they kept it a little more low key, and if they want to have some makeout sessions, then feel free to do it without anybody in the room. But hey, it's their game. Do whatever you want,
or with people in the room,
or with people apparently, because they clearly care enough that these people know that we're together. Might as well just make it official.
It is really hard to genuinely obscure true friendships and true attraction in the house. Again, just because you're in a confined space, it's 24/7. There's no place to hide. Everyone chit chats. Everyone gossips. Big Brother kind of conditions you to get the most out of every relationship as quickly as possible. So if you're vibing, with a buddy, bam, you're going to become, BFFs really fast. If you have an attraction to a girl and there's some flirtation, it's going to accelerate just because time spent. You think, when you're in school, how friendships and romances develop, and it's over days or weeks or months, because you're only seeing them a few hours a day. But you're living with these people 24/7. There is no escape. So you kind of get a little brazen about it every once in a while. Obviously, everybody, my season had several showmances, several pairs of two. And sort of, yes, it can become, you can become targeted for that. Absolutely. But there's also a lot of value in that. Okay, I know that if I get Gino, I also get JC Lynn, and that's 2 votes. And so if I'm looking at them as potential allies or a potential voting block, then you might want to keep those people around. Same as Summer and Tanisha. I expect that most people in the house would identify them as a duo. So if I get one, I get both. They're likely to vote in the same place every week. So there are pros and cons to being a obvious pair in the house. But I think that if you play it correctly, there are more pros than cons because it gives you more leverage, especially when there's a lot of numbers in the game. As the numbers dwindle, then you want to try to cut that off because then you're reducing your win percentage every week in competitions. But in this stage of the game, I think there's one, it's really difficult to hide an attraction, so you might as well just be open with it. And two, at least then you're being honest with other people and giving yourself some negotiation power in terms of, you know, how the vote may come out. Because if it's, you know, a real close split in the House and you know that you're a 2, you have the power to flip that to your leisure either way.
Right. I also wanted to point out something is that like Gino also has a really like a good relationship with Summer, but Summer is aware that JC Lynn is tight with Gino. If I were Summer, I would cut off JC Lynn so that way she can have Gino all to herself. Like it's a good way of effective strategy because you could look at it one way, be like, yeah, the duo is 2 votes, and they can either vote a certain way or they're going to be a target. Or you cut off one of the two and then you take the other one as the number. So you could use effective as like both strategies, but
well, I literally tried to do that in my season with Tom and Liza. And
fair enough.
So, but yes, you're right. That is a strategy that one could use.
So we now come to the beginning of Steph's End, where we see a really interesting conversation that occurs between Marty and Kevin. We talked about this earlier on. Kevin says, why do you think Canada gave Marty, why did Canada give you all of this safety power? It's because they wanted to help you. It's because you needed it. Marty gets scared, runs to Josh, says, I'm so sorry. You're on the block because of me. I screwed up. I was wrong. I'm going to work to keep you here. I'm not voting you out. Stephanie's going to go. And then amazingly to me, and I think it's to Josh's character as a human being, Josh says, I'm going to forgive this man. Not only am I going to forgive this man, I want to work with somebody who's older. I want to work with somebody who has a lot more wisdom than me. And I want to sit beside Marty in the final 2. Holy crap. Big turn of events, instigated by Kevin, a lot of the work done by Marty, and now he has a new final 2.
I don't think that was like Kevin's full intention with that, but I think the Josh Marty connection was entirely on their own terms. But I think what Kevin wanted is that he basically got Marty to turn on Kyle and Gino with taking out Steph. I bet had Kevin not done that, the votes would have been a lot more closer on a split, which we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, props to Kevin for actually managing to getting Marty to flip. I don't think Marty is I think Marty's the kind of player that like if you speak to him with legit logic, he would flip so easily, but it's all about using the knowledge effectively to your own benefit. And Kevin definitely showed that with the way that he like pitched about why did Canada give you a safety last week? Like that was definitely a good legit reason for it.
Yeah, you see the ripple effect, basically, how one conversation can lead to so many other things because every player has their own relationships and their own agenda and their own perspective. And so always in the House, there's relevant information and less relevant information. And so Marty, who seems like a very genuine person, and, you know, Josh recognizes that. Josh also seems like a very genuine person. So you have 2 genuine people having a genuine conversation and, you know, revealing the truth and just saying, hey, look, like I screwed up. We all screwed up. I'm trying to make amends for it. Let's move forward. If you have a prior positive relationship to that point, then, okay, cool. Like you see, you know, the fruits of the labor, you know, pay off. You know, so many people, they get it into their heads, you know, like when they're in trouble, that's when the game starts. Like, oh, it's game on now in week 4 because I've been sitting there like a lump on a log for 20 days or whatever. But the game starts as soon as you go in, and that means building relationships and friendships and whatever it is, and having strategic conversations. And so if Marty and Josh had that relationship to such a point in which they could, you know, bury that and move on from it in a beneficial way for both of them, it just goes to show that both of them are competent strategic players who are going to do what's best for both of them in the moment and recognize the value in the proposition being offered. Because a lot of times what happens, and I feel like you saw this a lot last year in Big Brother Canada 9, is that people would make a really competent argument as to why they should stay, and then nobody would listen to it because they didn't recognize the value to their game, or they're just like, you got one foot out the door, you're gone. So it's really hard to convince people of that kind of stuff, especially when you're admitting that you screwed up or you were potentially targeting someone or you're responsible. So I say kudos to both of them for kind of acknowledging what it is and then accepting and moving on from it.
We get to the vote. By a vote of 9-2, surprise, surprise, Steph is out the door. Big mouth, shocked as heck. JC Lids, shocked. Gino, stunned. Nobody saw it coming. Those people are the only ones that voted to keep Steph. Wow. Our first real blindside of the season.
Kyle gets the second L for that, for not locking in the votes to take out Josh. Like, here's the thing. Like, I get you want to make big moves in this game to make your mark and not have your HOHs to be a waste. Okay, I get that. But it's about, like, and we discussed this earlier about using it effectively and not having, like, and if you don't have the votes, then you can't make a move like that. And you can tell by, like, when Josh got put up on the block, T was crying, Summer was trying to hold back her frustration, and it's just like, you could tell some of these people did not like this at all. So there's potential going to be a massive flip. So I would have taken the better route, and like what Peter suggested is like put up Betty, and then from that point, if they want to make a big move, take out Steph. If they want to take the easy route, take out Betty. Like, it would have been a better recovery on his end compared to leaving two massive big shots to go on the block. Both of them become safe, and now Kyle is basically doomed if people like Gino or JC Lynn not winning HOH.
Is he really, is he really doomed? And like,
Exactly.
I don't want to get to the HOH, but is there not a benefit of keeping dead man walking in the house?
Sure. Yeah. Always. Sometimes your target can be so big that it becomes invisible, to quote Will Kirby from Big Brother USA 7. And it's possible, like, they might have felt, it's very possible that the group feels that they got Kyle. They got Kyle by having Stephanie be eliminated. And now they just, if he's always the easy person out, you go to the back of the line. Or you could take the perspective, I'm going to do what's best for the house this week. I'm going to do an easy week, get rid of, the consensus target. Everyone has, fun. There's value to that move, and that move can bite you in the butt too, because, then you're not really accelerating the game. You kind of put the game on pause for a little bit, which can disrupt the flow. So it will be really interesting to see if Kyle can recover from this. I think that's a huge storyline going forward, regardless of what happened. Like, does he have the capability to re-ingratiate himself to his allies, maybe form new allies? I don't know. It doesn't seem like they like him that much. It seems like there was a lot of glee in getting one up over on him. So if he's not likable, that means his social game is not strong, which means he's going to have a really hard time getting back in people's graces. But the wounded puppy angle might play. I don't know. It depends on how clever he's going to be, how bruised his ego is, and how much he's going to let that influence his decisions as time goes on, because so many things can change. The right person wins the wrong competition at the right time. Like, a power is introduced, a twist is introduced. Anything can happen. Like, you're not done until you walk out that door. So, every hour in that house is an hour that you have to save yourself and make somebody change their opinion of you. So, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he is able to recognize how poorly his HOH went, where he's like, oh my gosh, like, let me sit back and think about what I've just done, because he is going to have to manipulate what he did to his benefit, because
yeah. I think like
all his
Kyle,
relationships are destroyed.
Yeah, like I think like after Kyle's HOH week, I think this is probably one of the worst HOHs in BBCAN history. May rival Frenchies from Big Brother US 23, but the thing is that like knowing with Kyle is that like he was set up so well from the first 2 weeks to demolish that with winning HOH proves that, like, even after the realization with Stephanie Gomi, he was talking to Herman, being like, "Yeah, I think I messed up," and then Herman was just like, "Oh, really?"
Herman called it. Like, Herman. There's that scene with him in the hot tub area, being like, "No, you're kind of making all the wrong moves here." And Herman had the right. Like, he's exactly correct. Like, you have a huge voting block of the majority of the house, and why would you break that? Like, even if it inevitably is going to break up, why would you do it so early? And like, there's so much value in numbers. Like, the fact that they genuinely pulled off Blindsides and Survivor are relatively easy because the nature of everybody gets a vote every week, and everybody, unless you have immunity, but like, generally speaking, everybody in the tribe portion of the game, everybody's always eligible to be eliminated. In Big Brother, you only have 2 people eligible to be eliminated every week, and so to truly blindside someone in Big Brother is very rare and very difficult, because the information usually leaks before the eviction happens. And so the fact that they were pulled off is huge. That should probably consolidate that 9 together. Yeah. And another thing that I wanted to touch on is, like, and why I think JC Lynn became upset afterwards, is a lot of fans get upset at the notion of the unanimous vote every week. And I can understand why, from an optics perspective, of why you'd be, bored with, oh, it's 10-0, 9-0, 8-0, so on and so forth. But those votes, those 10-0 votes, whatever, they're not true 10-0 votes. So if there's 2 people up on the block and the vote is really 6-4, but I know that I'm in the 4, and the vote is not likely to get to that 5-5 split, like, we can't pull the other people over, I don't want to be in the clear voting minority, because that paints a target on you going forward. That's what Jess was having such a problem with at the beginning of the week, because they thought that, Herman had the Hinky vote, great, like, he played that so perfectly, because people's perception of Jess from the week before was that they, they voted the wrong way. So a lot of times those, like, unanimous house votes aren't really house votes. It's just a recognition of the player who's in the minority to ensure they're on the, quote, right side, because they know that they're not going to get, enough people shifted over to flip. There's always that kind of effort to flip, or usually there's the effort to flip. And then at a certain point, you just go, you know what? It's not going to happen. I can't be the odd person out. I can't be so clearly defined as voting against the grain that, you can become a potential target for it. So, like, I think there's, it's just another thing that is different between watching the show and kind of being results based, like, oh, it was 10-0, like, they didn't have a chance. Well, the true vote might have been 7-3, it might have been 6-4, like, it might have been 9-1. I don't know. But that one, why would they put themselves, like, going forward, they want to put themselves in the best position possible, not automatically ostracize themselves by being someone that's like, oh, okay, well, Peter voted against the grain, like, he's obviously not with us, because, perception is reality in there. It's just another kind of, like, nuance that doesn't really get touched on the show, but is a big part of the actual in-game experience.
So Steph is gone. We're about to get to an HOH competition. House guests had to memorize, or at least try to memorize, all of those prices that are in their pantry. And who ends up winning? Well, our Kiley's guy that she fawns over day and night, even when he sits on the toilet. Gino wins. The man that Kyle needed to win won that HOH. Whoa. This house is about to get crazy. What do y'all think is going to happen?
I think Kyle literally just bought himself another week with Gino winning HOH. Had anyone else won HOH, Kyle was 100% going to get backdoored. But I think the way that it's looking, and, like, I don't want to, like, go too much into the live feeds, but I can't say that another big move is going to be played. I can't go into details on much on that yet. You're going to have to find out on Tuesday for the live feeds. But let's just say it's going to be a lot less messier than what Kyle, like, at least let's hope. But I see another big move in the works with Gino right now. So I'm curious to see how he's going to pull it off. So I'm going to figure that out.
mean, even though Gino's pretty to look at, I genuinely root for like the underdogs. And so I love that they were able to pull this off and really just switch up the dynamics of the house. And so, like I'm rooting for the 9, but I love the fact that Gino won because it's like, okay, now we're going to have to shift again because the person that we probably would have been able to target a little bit, maybe they throw up Gino and Kyle if one of the 9 wins HOH. That can't happen now. So we're going to have to see some people kind of eat and crow a little bit of, oh, so sorry that we left you out of that vote. And so I'm happy that he wins for the viewer point of view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you bring up a great point. From Gino and JC Lynn and Kyle's perspective, it's sort of them 3 against the house.
Bingo.
So at least they know where the lines are always shifting. People talk about line in the sand, but the truth is the lines are always shifting constantly. And so they at least know right now where they're starting from and where they need to end up. So for Gino, he has to finish this HOH week better than he's starting it. So right now he essentially has 2-ish allies that he can, clearly count on that are, vote his way, so to speak. And everybody else is either has to be a target or potential new ally acquisition or reacquisition, the Martys, out there that are, still tangentially related. So I think Gino's, the thing that he has to focus on most in this week is improving his position by breaking up that 9 and kind of redistributing the numbers in the house a little bit. Because if they don't, even if he gets 1 out, if he keeps that 9 consolidated from a voting block perspective, then that 3 are not long for this world, probably.
This week also gives Kyle a chance to hopefully get a little bit of self-awareness, realize how he shot himself in the foot, and start making real, genuine relationships that will push him forward. This is a blessing for him. He got at minimum another week in this house. He's got to get to work now. He's got to get to work. Well, that was quite a week for everybody in the Big Brother Canada house.
I love
it. Peter, have anything to plug? Should we be subscribing to you? Do you have any boxing going on soon?
We are hopefully, now that COVID restrictions are loosening up, we hope to bring Celebrity Net Fights back this summer with players from your favorite reality shows stepping into the squared circle for boxing. So stay tuned. We'll definitely have news on that coming soon, and we hope to put another really fun card together for you.
Where would people find out information about that?
They can go to celebritynetfights.com or follow myself or Adele El-Siri from Big Brother Canada Season 2 on social media, or you can go to the Celebrity Net Fights Instagram, and we'll keep you updated as things progress. But I'm pretty hopeful that we'll be able to we had our second show canceled, obviously, because of COVID and all the stuff that was going on in January. But now that the world's looking a little bit more normal, so I think we'll be able to pull something off fun this summer for everybody and have a good time.
It's a little bit more normal, just a war, but hey, no pandemic, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Kylie, what do you got?
Well, we'll be back Thursday to recap episode 3 of Survivor 42, and we're loving this season so far. Really, really great characters that we're seeing, so excited for that. And we will be here Thursday for that.
Josh?
All right. So speaking of the pandemic, a little bit of a different kind of a pandemic that we're talking here. I host an online reality game called Survivor Pandemic. We make our own episodes that are very, very close to the actual reality show Survivor, but it is based off of Zoom. We are currently now from our 5th going into our 6th season. Episodes will be dropped around end of March, early April. The link will be dropped down below if you want to check out the past seasons from 1 to 5. You have players like Kiley and Sheldon who have also played in the season, so maybe you want to watch them, you can feel free to check them out as well. And as well, Season 7 All-Stars is going to be going into production May 27th. And it will be going on. All your past favorites from the first 5 seasons will be back to play one of the best online reality games in on Facebook currently in existence. Yes,
Ever.
I don't want to like get to my own horn too much, but like
I may have played and came in second place. Just
Oh,
saying.
nice.
I
Right
might
on.
have played and come in second place too.
So this is where the losers go. From my neck of the woods, check us out for the fans. Download our podcasts anywhere you get your friendly podcasts. Like us on YouTube. We're everywhere. So check us out. We will be back here with our BBCAN recap of the Monday 7 p.m. Eastern show this week, 7 p.m. Eastern, and a little bit of a sneak peek into what's going on in the live feeds where Josh Vitello will be bringing us some information. Mr. Peter Brown, thank you so much for joining us. Your insight was awesome. I hope you join us again one day. You really gave us an insider look into what's going on, and you're awesome. So keep on being you. Kiley, Josh, love to have you here as always. I'm Sheldon. That's it. We'll see you on Tuesday for our next podcast. Bye-bye.